and I am a painter. I am from Philadelphia, and kind of born and raised there, and lived in San Francisco for a while for grad school. This is an example of some work that I have currently in progress in the studio at Jentel. You can pass that around. I have one of these little ones that we can pass around so you can actually see it in person. So these are all what I would consider underpaintings or studies. So the one on the left is an underpainting, which means it's the first layer of the painting. And this one I decided to pause on because I'm used to having a lot of time between working sessions, so a lot of time to kind of digest what the next step is, and that's something I've been noticing here that I don't really have because we're so deep in it and working every day. So I paused on that one. The two on the right are color studies. So that's me thinking through what kind of colors I would use for a different painting. So these are just sort of two early stages of my process, and I'll talk a little bit more about my process as we go along. But if you'll, these are two examples of the one on the right is like a more detailed shot of the actual painting, and the one on the left is an install shot. So you can see, and this work was done, December 2015 is actually the title of the piece. This work was completed in 2021, but I started working on it in 2019 at another residency. So that gives you an idea of how long I spend usually on my paintings, and especially this one because it's very large scale. But what I was really interested in this one is like layers of space and overlaps. And in most of my work, I'm really interested in how maybe at first glance, the image can be understandable, but the more time you spend with it, the more it starts to dissolve and fracture and becomes less clear. So I think in this one, you can see, hopefully you can see that happening. This one was built, usually my sketching process I do digitally. So I'll work either with multiple photos. So this one might be like 100 photos that I collage together in Photoshop. And then I work directly from that image for this one. And this is the last painting that I did in this series that I was working on for about 10 years. And so since then I've been kind of transitioning away from that and thinking more about allowing kind of surprises to come through the process. So this is a painting, and sort of similarly to what Eric was saying, this is one that really felt very easy and spontaneous. It just kind of came very quickly, where I painted over a very old painting, and I loved the way that some of the shapes from the older painting were coming through and influencing how you were understanding the space in the foreground painting. So if you can see, there's sort of like a triangle at the bottom of this, and I think that really like emphasizes the space in kind of a surprising way. So I got really excited about that idea. And from that, I started to think about how I could build that into my process, those surprises. So this is kind of showing another bit of process. In 2022, I was commissioned by the Philadelphia Museum of Art to do a piece in response to a Matisse exhibition they had there. And I was given 2 weeks to do it, which, like, if you think about my first piece, that took me a really long time. It was like, okay, I'm gonna say yes to this because I can't say no, but, and it was also the end of the semester. I'm a teacher, so it was it was right after Thanksgiving. It was like in our crunch time, the end of the semester. So I didn't have a lot of time to work on it. So I spent a lot of time at the Matisse exhibition looking at images that I was excited about. And then I started doing a lot of charcoal drawings because there were so many charcoal drawings that he had in that exhibition that I was really excited about. And I love working with charcoal, and I rarely do it. So it was sort of a nice way to commune with his work. So on the right, you see a charcoal drawing that I did in my own kitchen that I was pretty excited about. It felt like a very Matisse space to me. So I was like, okay, this is, because when I started this, I made a bunch of really bad paintings at first. I made like 3 or 4 paintings that I won't ever show anyone, trying to get here. And then I made this drawing and I was like, okay, I'm in the right direction. We're going in the right place. And then if you see, like on the left, that's actually a printout of a digital sketch that I did. So I photographed the charcoal drawing, I overlaid it over a painting that I had done, like a copy of a Matisse, that I had done, and then I started kind of playing with color ideas. And so the center is that painting in progress, and you can kind of see the figure of a woman under the table if you look really carefully. So you can see sort of a ghost of that Matisse painting that I was painting over. And if you go to the next one, this is the finished piece. So this is where it ended up. And so there were so many different iterations that I did through drawing and through like digital color studies and things like that, but I did get it finished in those 2 weeks and I'm pretty happy with where it landed, so. And then they turned it into like a vinyl mural in Philadelphia, which was pretty cool. And so this is an example from a show that I did in 2022. Everything in the last few years kind of turns into a blur, but this is an example where you can see sort of those layers of space. And what I started doing with these next few works is I started actually like reverse engineering my process of how I was building the paintings. So I would still sketch them in Photoshop, but then I would turn off all the layers and go back to that first layer and actually paint that, and then sort of like do that process in painting rather than looking at that final Photoshop sketch. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, and that sort of came through that Matisse piece, like that process, how I figured that out, kind of influenced where I was going from there. So this has like maybe 3 different layers of 3 different photos that are working together in it. And it looks nothing like the original digital sketch. There's so much more, so many more surprises and shapes and color interactions that I got really excited about in that process. Here's another example of a painting that I did in that same mode. And these are fairly small compared to that really large painting that I showed in the beginning. I've been working smaller partially because I have a much smaller studio. I have a home studio now. At that time I didn't. And I have a long commute to work, so I have a lot less time in my studio. But also, it's been fun working smaller because I think I can be a little bit more spontaneous and it doesn't feel as like pressured. It's not as like, I haven't invested 2 years in it, so if it doesn't work out, that's okay. All right. And here is, oh, it's cutting off a little bit. Here's another example from that series. This one's a little bit larger. And I got really interested in like, you know, what am I leaving from the background image and what am I showing from the foreground image, and how, like this one, there are actually like 3 figures in it, and I started thinking about bringing in figures, as you can see in the last couple. For years, I was working mostly with interior spaces, but thinking about how that talks about the inhabitants of those spaces and those stories. And so I was interested in how can I reintroduce the figure to that. And in this, there's actually 3 figures in it, but they're mostly negative space, so sort of the outline of it and the hole in the painting, or where you can see the background more, is where those figures are existing. I hope this color is looking better than what I'm seeing, but and I also got really excited and interested in color in the last few years. I'm teaching color theory and 2D design at Pennsylvania College of Art and Design, and that has sort of wormed its way into my brain. So thinking about how different colors interact, and that also came through like the layering process. There were surprises that happened in color relationships, and so in this one, I sort of intended to add layers to it, but I just got so in love with how the colors were interacting that it ended up being just sort of the same image, but with color layers rather than with different image layers. And this is, I don't know how quickly I went. I meant to set a timer, but I didn't. This is my last slide. And in the last, I would say, maybe 6 months, maybe a little bit longer than that, I started to get very excited about working from direct observation rather than working from photographs. And so I've been setting up, I'm a big gardener, and so I've been bringing things in from my garden, setting things up in my studio, and this piece, I actually physically put older paintings behind it to create the shapes of color that were there, and then worked from like directly looking at the setup in front of me, and started out on a toned ground, so like that blue that you see that's the predominant color is the background color, and that affected every layer that went on top of it. And the shapes in the background are coming from the paintings that are behind it. So I was creating kind of layers actually in physical space rather than on the computer, rather than digitally. What time am I at? Did I go way too fast? No? Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
I want to make sure I understand. I think you described it. When you're putting over an old painting, you don't gesso over.
No, I want the old painting to be showing through. Like that's part of the surprise that I'm excited about.
Okay,
yeah.
I thought that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Do you hear provocative and 5-dimensional about your work?
No.
That's what I see.
Okay. All right. I'm not sure how to take that.
You want to tell me more? It's meant in a good way.
Okay.
It's healthy, it's exciting. I think it's important work because I haven't seen it elsewhere.
Okay, thank you.